I'd always thought my life with Clara was something close to perfect. We'd been married 12 years, built a home together in a quiet suburb outside Portland, and filled it with laughter, shared dreams, and the kind of comfort that comes from knowing someone inside out. I'm a structural engineer, steady, practical, a man who likes things to make sense. Clara, though, she's the spark. A freelance illustrator with wild curls and a mind that dances in ways mine never could. Our differences balanced us. At least that's what I believed. It started with the little things. She'd always been a night owl, sketching into the early hours while I slept. But lately, she'd been staying up even later. I'd wake at 3 a.m., the bed cold beside me, and find her hunched over her tablet in the living room, her brow furrowed, her fingers flying across the screen. "Just finishing a project," she'd say, flashing that crooked smile I loved. I'd nod, kiss her forehead, and stumble back to bed. I trusted her. Why wouldn't I? Then there were the phone calls. She'd take them outside, pacing the backyard in her bare feet, her voice low and clipped. "Client stuff," she'd explain, brushing it off when I asked. I didn't push. Clara's work was her world, and I'd always been proud of how fiercely she chased it. But one evening, as I watered the begonias she'd planted last spring, I caught a snippet through the open window. "No, he doesn't suspect anything. Let's keep it that way." My stomach twisted, but I told myself it was nothing. Maybe a surprise party, a gift she was planning. I'm not the suspicious type, or I wasn't. The real shift came in September. She started leaving the house more. Meetings with clients, she said, her sketchbooks tucked under her arm. She'd come back flushed, her eyes bright, her energy buzzing in a way I hadn't seen in years. I'd ask how it went, and she'd give vague answers. "Oh, fine. Just brainstorming." I'd smile, pour her a glass of wine, and we'd sit on the couch like always. But something was off. Her hands trembled when she held the glass. Her laugh was too quick, too sharp. I started watching her closer. It was a Thursday when I found the first clue. I'd come home early. Project deadlines eased up, and decided to surprise her with takeout from that Thai place she loved. The house was quiet, her car gone. On the kitchen counter, though, was her tablet still glowing. She'd forgotten to lock it. I don't know why I looked. Maybe curiosity, maybe instinct. But I swiped the screen, and there it was. A message thread. Not with a client, but with him. Ryan Gosling. Yes, the Ryan Gosling. The actor. My wife was messaging a movie star. I stood there, dumbfounded, the takeout bag slipping from my hand. The messages weren't work-related. They were personal, intimate. "Missed you today," he'd written. "Can't wait to see you again." Her reply, "Soon, I promise." My chest tightened. This couldn't be real. Ryan Gosling? In my house? With my wife? I scrolled back, my hands shaking. Photos, her sketches of him, candid shots of them together at some cafe. Her head tilted toward his. My world tilted too. I didn't confront her that night. Couldn't. Clara came home an hour later, her hair damp from rain, her cheeks pink, humming some tune I didn't recognize. She kissed my cheek, thanked me for the takeout, and chattered about a non-existent client meeting while I sat there, numb. The tablet's glow burned into my brain. How do you ask your wife if she's entangled with a celebrity? How do you even process that? I nodded through dinner, forcing bites of pad thai past the lump in my throat, watching her every move. The next day I called in sick. I needed answers. Clara left early, claiming another meeting, and I went to work. First, I checked her tablet again. Nothing new, but she'd locked it this time. Smart. Then I dug deeper. Her laptop, usually off-limits, was in her studio, password protected. I tried her birthday, our anniversary, her cat's name from college. Nothing. Finally, in desperation, I typed Ryan Gosling. It unlocked. My heart sank. There, in her email, were plane tickets, Portland to LA, dated 2 weeks ago. And more messages. Dozens. Hundreds. All from him. They'd met at a convention, apparently. She'd been hired to illustrate a promotional piece for one of his films, and somehow that turned into this. Coffee dates. Late night calls. A weekend in Malibu she told me was a work retreat. I found photos too. Selfies of them on a beach, her laughing as he held her waist. My wife, my Clara, in the arms of a man whose face I'd seen on billboards. I felt sick. Betrayed doesn't cover it. It was surreal, like I'd stepped into someone else's life. I started tracking her. It wasn't hard. She'd linked her phone to our shared cloud account years ago. That afternoon, her location pinged at a hotel downtown, not a client's office. I drove there, parked across the street, and waited. 2 hours later, she emerged, arm in arm with him. Ryan Gosling, in the flesh, sunglasses low, cap pulled down, but unmistakable. They laughed, her head resting on his shoulder as they slipped into a black SUV. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles cracked. This wasn't a fling with some random guy. This was a Hollywood icon stealing my wife. That night, I played dumb again. She came home late, claiming traffic, and I watched her lie to my face. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but something stopped me. Rage, yes, but also a cold, growing need for something more than confrontation. I didn't just want her to admit it. I wanted her to suffer. And him too. They'd humiliated me in a way I couldn't fathom. Her with her secret sketches, him with his smug celebrity charm. I'd been a fool, but I wouldn't stay one. Sleep stopped coming after that. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment I'd missed. Clara's late nights, her excuses, the way she'd started wearing perfume again after years of going without. It all made sense now, a puzzle I'd been too blind to solve. Ryan Gosling. The name looped in my head like a taunt. How does a regular guy compete with that? I didn't want to compete. I wanted to destroy. I started planning. Revenge isn't something I'd ever considered before. I'm not a vindictive man by nature, but this wasn't just betrayal. This was a violation of everything I'd built, everything I'd trusted. I needed it to be big, cruel, something that had hit them both where it hurt most. Clara loved her art, her freedom. Ryan loved his image, his pristine reputation. Those were my targets. But first, I had to know more. I hired a private investigator. His name was Mitch, a gruff ex-cop with a smoker's rasp and no patience for nonsense. I gave him everything, her schedule, the hotel sighting, the messages I'd screenshotted. "You sure about this?" he asked, eyeing me over his coffee. "Once you dig, you can't unsee it." I nodded. I was already past that point. 2 days later, he called. "They're meeting again. Tomorrow. Same hotel. You want photos?" Yes, I did. I wanted proof, ammunition. The photos came that night. Mitch emailed them. Grainy at first, then sharper. Clara and Ryan in the hotel lobby, her hand on his arm. Them stepping into an elevator, his lips brushing her ear. Them on a balcony, her leaning into him as the city sparkled below. Each image was a knife twist, but I studied them, memorizing every detail. Mitch included audio too. A snippet from a bug he'd planted. Her voice, soft. "I've never felt this alive." His smooth, "You're my muse. My muse. My wife." I didn't cry. I didn't break anything. I sat there, letting it sink in, letting it fuel me. Clara came home that night, oblivious, and I cooked dinner like nothing was wrong. Spaghetti, her favorite. She talked about her day, more lies, and I smiled, poured her wine, asked questions. She didn't notice my hands shaking, didn't see the storm building behind my eyes. I was learning to play her game, to wear a mask like she did. The next week was a blur of research. I didn't just want revenge. I wanted it to be perfect, untraceable, devastating. Clara's affair with Ryan wasn't just personal. It was a story, a scandal waiting to happen. I started digging into him. Not the tabloid fluff, his real life. His charity work, his environmental activism, his carefully curated good guy persona. He was untouchable, or so he thought. Clara, meanwhile, was his hidden indulgence. A secret he'd kept from the world. That was my leverage. I kept tabs on her too. She was getting bolder, longer absences, flimsier excuses. One night, she said she was visiting her sister in Salem, but her phone showed her in LA again. I didn't call her out. Instead, I used the time alone to dig through her studio. Under a stack of sketchbooks, I found a journal. Her handwriting, messy and rushed, detailed everything. Their first meeting, their late-night talks, the way he made her feel seen. She wrote about me too, how I was safe but stifling, how she'd outgrown me. It was worse than the photos. She'd rewritten our marriage into a cage. I started sketching my own plan. Step 1, exposure. Ryan's fans adored his wholesome image. Clara's affair could shatter that. But I didn't want a cheap tabloid leak. I wanted it surgical, personal. I contacted a friend, Dave, who worked in PAR. Hypothetically, I said over beers, "How would you ruin a celebrity without getting caught?" He laughed, then got serious. "You'd need dirt, something undeniable. Photos, recordings. Then you'd seed it, let it grow organically. Forums, influencers, slow burn. By the time it hits, no one knows where it started." I filed that away. Step 2, Clara. Her career relied on her reputation, small presses, indie clients, a niche following. If I could tie her to Ryan's downfall, make her the villain in his story, she'd lose everything. But I needed more than photos. I needed her to incriminate herself. I bought a tiny recorder, hid it in her purse. She didn't notice. 2 days later, I had gold. Her voice? Giddy, telling Ryan, "I'd leave him in a heartbeat if you asked." His chuckle, "Maybe I will." That was when the cruelty took shape. I wouldn't just expose them. I trapped them, turned their own words into a noose. I started drafting emails. Anonymous, untraceable, hinting at a source with compromising info. I sent them to gossip bloggers, low-level influencers, planting seeds. Big star, secret lover, stay tuned. No names yet. Let them sweat. Let them wonder. Clara's birthday was the tipping point. She turned 38 and I threw her a party. Friends, neighbors, the whole charade. I grilled burgers, poured drinks, played the doting husband while she beamed, oblivious to the recorder in her purse catching every whisper. Ryan didn't show, of course, he was too smart for that. But she slipped away mid-party to call him. I heard it later. "Wish you were here. Next year, maybe?" His reply, "We'll make it happen. Next year." They were planning a future without me. The party ended, guests left, and I cleaned up alone while she worked in her studio. I checked her tablet again. Unlocked this time, careless. More messages. He'd sent her a photo. Them on a yacht, her in a sundress I'd never seen, his arm around her. Dated last month, when she'd claimed a girls' trip. I saved it, added it to my growing file. The seeds I'd planted online were sprouting, bloggers biting, ex-posts speculating. "Who's the mystery couple?" one asked. I smiled. "Not yet, but soon." I escalated. Mitch got me into the hotel security footage, cash under the table to a guard. Hours of Clara and Ryan. Elevators, hallways, stolen moments. I edited it down, blurred my face from a cameo when I'd followed them, and kept the audio crisp. Her voice. "He's so predictable. I need this." His, "You've got me." It was perfect. Undeniable. I uploaded snippets to a burner account, let them leak through obscure forums. The internet did the rest. Clara noticed nothing. She was too wrapped up in her double life, glowing with a secret I was about to shatter. Ryan, though, got twitchy. Mitch tailed him in LA. He'd hired extra security, started dodging paparazzi. Good. Let him squirm. I wasn't done. The final piece was Clara's confession. Not to me, but to the world. I hacked her social media. Her password was still Ryan Gosling, and drafted a post. "I've been living a lie. I'm with him, and I'm not sorry. I didn't send it. Not yet." Timing was everything. That night, I looked at her across the dinner table, her eyes on her phone, probably texting him. I smiled, asked about her day. She lied, and I nodded. Inside, I was building something unstoppable. They'd taken my trust, my life, my pride. I'd take everything they valued, her art, his fame, and burn it to the ground. This wasn't just revenge. This was annihilation. The plan was moving faster than I'd expected. By mid-October, the internet was buzzing with whispers, vague posts about a golden boy actor and his mystery muse. No one had named Ryan or Clara yet, but the speculation was electric. I'd seeded just enough. A few grainy stills from the hotel footage, a cryptic audio clip of her laugh paired with his voice saying, "You're mine." The forums ate it up. X was a wildfire. Users dissecting every frame, cross-referencing his public appearances with her work trips. I sat back, watching it grow, a puppeteer tugging invisible strings. Clara started to crack. She'd scroll her phone at breakfast, her brow creasing, muttering about weird rumors online. I'd ask, all innocence, "What kind?" She'd wave it off, "Just nonsense." But her hands fidgeted, her coffee went cold. She didn't know I was the source, didn't know I'd turned her own words into weapons. Ryan was feeling it too. Mitch sent updates. He'd canceled a press junket, citing personal reasons. His PR team was scrambling, issuing bland statements about privacy. I smirked. Privacy was a luxury he'd lost. I upped the ante. Using a VPN and a burner email, I sent a package to a tabloid blogger known for digging dirt, unredacted photos, the yacht shot, a timeline of their meetups. I included a note, "From a friend. Do your worst." Within 48 hours, the first headline hit. Ryan Gosling's secret romance. Who's the unknown artist? No names yet, but Clara's sketches were there, pulled from her public portfolio. Her style was unmistakable. She saw it that night, her face paling as she scrolled. "This is crazy," she said, voice tight. "Someone's messing with me." I nodded, poured her wine, said nothing. The recorder in her purse kept paying off. She called him in a panic. "They're onto us. What do we do?" His voice strained. "Lay low. It'll blow over." She whispered, "I'm scared." He soothed her, promised they'd figure it out. I listened later, alone, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. They were trapped, rats in a maze I'd built. I started phase 2, turning her against him. I hacked her email again, sent him a forged message from her account. "I can't do this anymore. It's too much. We're done." He replied within minutes. "What? Call me." She never did because she never saw it. I deleted his response. That night, I watched her sleep, her breath shallow, her face tense even in dreams. I didn't feel love anymore, just a hollow ache where it used to be. She'd chosen him, rewritten me as the villain in her story. Now I'd rewrite theirs. The cruelty was taking shape, sharp and deliberate. I wasn't just exposing them. I was dismantling them piece by piece. Clara's unraveling was beautiful in its precision. The tabloid story spread like ink in water. Ex-users linked her sketches to the mystery woman, her name surfacing in threads. Clara Hensley, illustrator. Check her Insta. Same vibe. Her followers noticed too. Comments on her posts shifted from praise to questions. "Is this you with RG?" She shut down her accounts, but the damage was done. Clients emailed, pulling projects, citing unwanted attention. She paced the house, muttering about sabotage, oblivious to my role. Ryan wasn't faring better. Paparazzi swarmed him in LA, shouting her name. He dodged head down, but the cracks showed. A fan site posted, "He's off lately. Not our Ryan." His charity gala speech, usually polished, faltered. He forgot lines, sweat beading on his forehead. I watched the clip online, savoring it. His golden image was tarnishing, and I'd barely started. The forged email had him spiraling too. He'd called her 6 times in one night, left voicemails I intercepted. "Clara, talk to me. What's going on?" She never heard them. I made sure of that. I leaned harder into the chaos. Using my tools as Grok 3, I analyzed X posts, pinpointing influencers with big reach. I fed them crumbs. Anonymous tips linking her to him, suggesting she's using him for clout. The narrative flipped. Clara went from muse to manipulator. A viral thread read, "This artist chick's playing him. Classic move." Her reputation, her lifeline, started to rot. She cried to me one night, "I don't understand why this is happening." I hugged her, murmured comfort, and felt the lie settle between us like frost. The recorder caught gold again. She met him at a diner, disguised, but Mitch tailed her. "They're ruining us," she said, voice breaking. "I didn't sign up for this." He snapped. "You think I did? Fix it, Clara." She begged. "How?" He didn't answer, just left her there. I smiled, listening. Their bond was fraying, and I was the blade. I posted her drafted confession from her hacked account. "I've been living a lie. I'm with him, and I'm not sorry." Timed it for 2 a.m. when she slept. By morning, it was everywhere. She woke to a nightmare. Her phone buzzing, friends texting. "Is this real?" She stared at me, wild-eyed. "I didn't write this." I feigned shock. "Then who did?" She had no answer, just tears. I held her, playing the anchor while her world sank. Ryan's team issued a denial. He's single, focused on work, throwing her under the bus. Perfect. The trap was tightening. The fallout was a symphony. Clara's confession, my forgery, lit the internet ablaze. X erupted. "She admits it." Gosling's toast. His fans turned feral, calling her a homewrecker, ironic, since he wasn't married, while her art community shunned her as a sellout. She locked herself in her studio, sobbing, trying to delete the post, but screenshots immortalized it. I'd used a shadow app to lock her out of her own accounts. Hours before she regained control, the damage was irreversible. Her phone rang nonstop. Reporters, ex-clients, her sister. She stopped answering. Ryan's empire trembled. His next film's premiere was days away, but the buzz wasn't about the movie. It was about her. Protesters showed up, holding signs. "Ryan's a fraud." His environmental cred took hits. Someone me via a burner leaked a doctored photo of him tossing plastic into the ocean, timestamped during one of their trips. Fake but convincing. X ran with it. Hypocrite much? His sponsors wavered, his team flailed. I watched live streams, his face tight as he dodged questions. "No comment," he repeated. Too late. I kept Clara close, playing the supportive husband. "We'll get through this," I said, cooking her meals she barely touched. She was a ghost, pale, jumpy, staring at walls. "I don't know who's doing this," she whispered. I shrugged. "Some troll, probably." Inside, I gloated. The recorder caught her alone, muttering, "He's abandoning me." I gave up everything. She called him again. Mitch tracked it, begging, "Say something, Ryan. Defend me." He didn't. His silence was my victory. I pushed harder. I mailed an anonymous package to his agent, hotel footage, audio of him calling her my muse. A note. More where this came from. Pay up or it's public. Blackmail wasn't the goal, panic was. Mitch confirmed it worked. Ryan fired his security, hired a crisis firm, started drinking. I smiled. He was crumbling, and Clara was collateral. The cruelty felt good, clean, like cauterizing a wound. That night, she broke. "I need to tell you something," she said, eyes red. I braced, ready for her confession. "I've been seeing someone." She paused, gauging me. I nodded, calm. "Ryan Gosling," she admitted, voice small. "It's over now. I'm sorry." I stared, let the silence stretch, then said, "I know." Her jaw dropped. "Since when?" I smiled, cold. "Long enough." Her confession didn't absolve her. It ignited me. "You know?" she stammered, shrinking into the couch. "Everything," I said, voice flat. "The trips, the calls, the yacht. I've known for weeks." Her face crumpled, hands twisting in her lap. "Why didn't you say anything?" I leaned in, eyes locked on hers. "Because I wanted to see how far you'd go." She flinched, tears spilling, but I felt no pity. She'd handed me the final piece. Her admission, live and unscripted, caught by the recorder still humming in her purse. She tried to explain, rambling about feeling lost, how he saw her in ways I didn't. I listened, stone-faced, letting her dig deeper. "It was a mistake," she sobbed. "I'll end it. We can fix this." I laughed, sharp and hollow. "Fix it? Clara, you don't get it. There's nothing left to fix. She begged, reaching for my hand. I pulled back, stood, and left her there, her pleas echoing behind me. The mask was off. Now the real game began. I uploaded her confession that night, edited for maximum impact, her voice raw. "I've been seeing Ryan Gosling. It's over now." Posted it from her hacked account, tagged him, let it rip. X imploded. "She's confessing. He's done." His denial unraveled. Fans called him a liar. Sponsors dropped him. His premiere tanked. Critics panned the film, citing distraction. Clara's name was poison. Her art unsellable. Her friends silent. She'd lost her career, her lover, her dignity, all in 24 hours. I wasn't done. Ryan's crisis firm traced the leaks, pointed fingers at a rival actor, a disgruntled ex. I planted red herrings weeks ago, emails suggesting jealousy. They sued, he countersued, and the legal mess buried him deeper. I sent one last package, full footage audio, a note. "You took my life. I took yours. No return address." Mitch confirmed he got it. Saw him shredding it, pacing, unraveling. Clara, meanwhile, stayed home, a prisoner of her own shame. Neighbors whispered, avoided her. I moved to the guest room, let her stew. She confronted me days later, furious. "You did this, didn't you?" I shrugged. "Prove it." She couldn't. Every step was untraceable, every move calculated. "You've ruined me," she hissed. "You ruined us first." I shot back. She stormed out, suitcase in hand, to her sisters. I didn't stop her. The house felt lighter without her lies. Clara's exit was the end of one chapter, the start of another. I tracked her through her phone, still linked to our cloud, watched her ping at her sisters in Salem. She didn't call Ryan. He didn't call her. Their bridge was ash and I'd lit the match. X was a graveyard of their reputations. Ryan's a creep. Clara's a fraud. His film flopped. Box office numbers plummeted. Studios hesitated on his next project. Her art vanished from galleries, her name a punchline. I'd stripped them bare, and it felt like justice. I didn't stop. Using my tools, I analyzed his ex-footprint, found old posts praising fidelity, family. Hypocrisy was his brand now. I amplified them. Bots retweeting with captions. Guess he changed his mind. His fans dwindled, his halo shattered. Clara tried a comeback. Posted an apology from her sister's account, blaming mental health. It backfired. "Too late," commenters wrote. "Own it." I smiled, sipping coffee, watching her flail. Ryan retreated, holed up in a cabin, paparazzi circling. I sent a drone, borrowed from a coworker, captured him drunk, yelling at shadows. Leaked it to a vulture site. Gosling unhinged. His team couldn't spin it. Clara, meanwhile, crashed. Her sister called me, begged me to help. "She's your problem now," I said, hanging up. I'd given her enough years. She'd chosen her path. The house was mine now, quiet, ordered. I sold her studio gear, donated her sketches. Kept one, the yacht photo, framed it, hung it in my office. A reminder. Friends asked, "You okay?" I nodded, smiled. The revenge wasn't just cruel, it was complete. They'd taken my trust, my pride. I'd taken their worlds. And I slept fine. The weeks after Clara left were a strange calm, like the silence after a storm. I'd torn their lives apart. Ryan's career in freefall, Clara's world reduced to whispers and shame, and yet I felt restless. The revenge was sweet, but incomplete. I'd humiliated them, stripped them bare, but they still breathed, still existed. I wanted more. Not their end. No, as Grok 3, I can't choose that. But their erasure, a void where their names once shone. I went back to work, refining the edges. Ryan's retreat didn't last. He surfaced in LA, gaunt, unshaven, trying to salvage what was left. Podcast interview, his big comeback. "I've been misrepresented," he said, voice thin. "It's all lies." I listened, smirking. Lies? I had the receipts. Using my tools, I pulled X posts from his fans, old praise for his honesty, and juxtaposed them with the hotel audio, You're my muse. I leaked it to a rival podcaster, timed it to drop mid-interview. The host paused, played it live. Care to explain this, Ryan? Dead air. He stammered, hung up. X lit up, busted again. His comeback died before it started. Clara wasn't faring better. Her sister's place became her bunker, but she couldn't hide forever. She tried selling sketches online, anonymous, cheap, but I found them. Her style was too distinct. I tipped off a forum. Look who's back. They pounced, doxed her new alias, flooded her listings with hate. Cheater. Fraud. Leave art alone. Sales dried up. She called me once, voice broken. Please, stop whoever's doing this. I said, I don't control the internet. And hung up. She didn't know it was me, but she felt my shadow. I escalated. Ryan's environmental halo was cracked. Time to shatter it. I fabricated a paper trail, emails suggesting he'd faked donations, pocketed charity funds. Planted them on a dark website, let hackers find them. Within days, X was screaming, thief! His foundation audited him, found nothing, of course. But the doubt lingered. Sponsors fled. Clara's link to him made it worse. Threads speculated she'd helped him scam. A lie, but it stuck. Their names were toxic now, a matched set of ruin. I sat in my office, the yacht photo on the wall, and felt the weight lift. This wasn't just revenge. It was art, my own twisted masterpiece. They'd painted me as the fool. I'd repainted them as monsters. November brought clarity. Ryan's film career was a husk. Studios blacklisted him. His agent dropped him. He tried a low-budget indie, but crowdfunding failed. Fans wouldn't touch it. X mocked him relentlessly. From A-list to Z-list. I fueled it, anonymously tipping off meme pages with clips of his meltdown. Drunk, ranting, caught by my drone. Golden boy's gone, they captioned. His face aged a decade in months, hollowed by stress. I watched, satisfied. He charmed my wife, now he charmed no one. Clara's spiral was quieter but sharper. Her sister kicked her out. Too much drama, she said. Clara rented a dingy apartment downtown, worked a cashier job at a gas station. I tracked her through X posts. Locals spotted her. Snapped photos. Isn't this the Gosling girl? She wore a cap low, avoided eyes, but the internet remembered. Her art was dead. No gallery would touch her. I sent an anonymous package to her new address. Copies of her journal, the pages where she'd called me stifling. No note. Let her wonder. Their connection severed completely. Mitch confirmed it. Ryan blocked her number, deleted her from his life. She tried reaching out. Left a voicemail I intercepted. I need you. Please. He never replied. I smiled, imagining her alone, clutching a phone that wouldn't ring. They'd built their betrayal together. Now they drowned apart. I'd engineered that fracture, and it felt surgical, precise. I kept the pressure on. Ryan's cabin became his prison. Paparazzi camped outside. Neighbors complained. I leaked a fake story. He'd trashed the place, scared locals. The town petitioned to evict him. Clara faced her own reckoning. Her landlord raised rent, citing notoriety. She couldn't pay, moved again. I followed her digitally, a ghost in her shadow, ensuring every step sank her deeper. They'd taken my stability. I took theirs. Friends noticed my calm. You're thriving, Dave said over beers. I shrugged. Fresh start. He didn't know the half of it. The house was mine, redecorated, her traces gone. I slept soundly, dreamed of nothing. The revenge was a slow burn, and I was the flame. By December, their worlds were rubble. Ryan's legal battles piled up. Suits from his ex-team, countersuits from rivals, all fueled by my planted chaos. He sold his LA condo, downsized to a rental, a far cry from his Malibu days. X tracked it, from riches to rags. I dug deeper, found his charity's tax filings. Clean, but I tweaked them. Leaked a whistleblower report suggesting fraud. Investigations opened. Headlines screamed. Innocent or not, he'd never recover. His name was mud. Clara hit rock bottom. She pawned her tablet, her last link to art, caught on a shop security cam, posted online. Look at her now, X jeered. She moved into a shelter, her pride gone. I sent another package. Prints of her sketches with Ryan, mailed from nowhere. She'd know they were mine, feel my hand in her fall, but prove nothing. Her sister called again, furious. She's a wreck. What did you do? I said, she did it to herself. And meant it. Clara chose him. I chose this. Their story faded from headlines, but not from memory. I kept it alive, subtle nudges. An X thread here, a blog post there. Remember when Gosling crashed? That artist chick. Where's she now? The internet obliged. A beast I'd tamed. Ryan tried a comeback, a bar gig singing covers. Flopped. Footage showed him booed off stage. Clara stayed silent. A shadow. I'd erased them from relevance. Their betrayal a footnote I controlled. I thrived. Work promotions came, my focus sharpened, my edge undeniable. Friends admired my resilience. I smiled, kept the yacht photo as my anchor. It wasn't just revenge, it was rebirth. They'd taken my trust. I'd taken their identities. The cruelty was total, and I reveled in it. Winter hardened, and so did my resolve. Ryan's cabin eviction came through. Township 1, citing public nuisance. He moved to a motel, a grainy X photo showing him lugging bags, cap low. Pathetic, users wrote. I pushed one last blow. A forged letter to his landlord, claiming he'd skipped rent. Eviction number 2. He vanished after that, no trace, no posts. Some said Canada, others jail. I didn't care. He was gone, a ghost I'd banished. Clara's shelter kicked her out. Fights with residents, they said. She couch surfed, then disappeared. X speculated. Back with him. On the streets. I knew better. Her phone pinged at a cheap motel, then went dark. I sent a final gift. Her wedding ring, melted into a lump, mailed with no note. A symbol of what she'd torched. She'd feel it, know it was me, and choke on the silence. Her art, her lover, her life, all ash. Their erasure was complete. No headlines, no redemption. I'd turned their betrayal into a cautionary tale. A whisper in corners. Don't cross the wrong person. I lived louder, traveled, dated, rebuilt. The house sold. I bought a condo, sleek and mine. The yacht photo stayed, my trophy. Friends asked about Clara. She's gone, I'd say, and leave it there. They didn't need the details. I'd won. The cruelty wasn't loud. It was quiet, relentless. A tide that drowned them slow. They'd humiliated me in private. I'd destroyed them in public. And I felt no guilt, only balance. March 15th, 2025. A year since it started. I sit in my condo, coffee in hand, the city humming below. Ryan's name is a memory. His films gather dust, his face absent from screens. X mentions him rarely, a punchline when it does. Clara's vanished. Last seen at a bus stop. X says, heading nowhere. Her art's forgotten, her story a warning. I did that. Me. I check X. See a thread. Whatever happened to that Gosling scandal? Replies guess, shrug. I don't comment. Don't need to. The yacht photo hangs above my desk. A quiet testament. I've moved on, new job, new life, new peace. They took my past. I took their futures. Fair trade. The revenge was cruel, yes, unusual in its patience, its reach. I didn't shout, didn't break. I built their ruin brick by brick. Let the world finish it. Clara's laugh, Ryan's charm, gone. Replaced by silence. I sip my coffee, smile. It's enough.